With episode 3 of The Last of Us Season 2 officially out, a lot of fans are feeling a little worried. With the season hitting one of its highest rated episodes in the entire series, and then kind of getting smacked in the face by whatever the hell this was, a lot of fans are kind of feeling uneasy on whether or not this is going to change the momentum of the entire show. But in order to find out, I sent my top general to watch the show and give the good, the bad, and their final verdict. Is this episode as divisive as some fans say? Let's jump into it.
What's up, guys? It's Frank from Marsman Gaming, and this is The Last of Us Season 2 Episode 3 review. And normally, if you've been watching the last couple of weeks, I have Haki with me. No, he did not give up on the show because one of our favorite characters has been eliminated, but he couldn't record this week, so it's just me doing a solo one. And this is a gamer's perspective of this episode. And we're going to start off with a non-spoiler review. I'll dive into the good, the bad, and my final verdict, and then go into a spoiler discussion. So don't worry for the non-spoiler fans out there. And I want to start off with what I liked in this episode. And I have to be honest with you guys, last week was a huge moment for the show. Even with things I disliked, when we talked about it, I thought it was very strong. Even with things I disliked, probably kept it from being elite. And I'm going to stick with my score from last week. But this week, there wasn't a ton that I loved. I have to be honest. And one thing you know you're going to get from The Last of Us, which continues in this one, which I will include in my good category, is the set pieces, the environments. All those things really continue the vibe of the Last of Us universe. And that continues in this episode. It is without question they do an extremely good job of. And you also know you're going to get strong performances. And from this week, I think Dina was very good. I think she has been a pretty big star for the start of this season. She's been very impressive. I think she's actually been more impressive than the Dina in the game. I really like the way she has a lot of personality. She creates a really good dynamic. And this was an important episode because it relied heavily on Ellie and Dina and their connection. And I think Dina, on her side, did a fantastic job. Another thing, Gale. I really like the Gale character. I know that's a bit controversial. Not everyone does. But Gale brings a different dynamic. Again, the therapist, if you're unfamiliar with what Gale, she is the therapist there. And I really like her interactions with multiple different characters. And it continues in this show. The last part I'll say about the good is I do like that they filled in some of the gaps with Jackson. This is, again, the aftermath of one of the biggest episodes of the show. Probably one of the biggest episodes of the series because it's going to push this plot to where it's going. And in the game, they don't address a lot of the Jackson stuff, the kind of turmoil on what to do next. This one, they kind of fill in those gaps a little bit more, and they show that tension on how are we going to address this problem going forward. And so they do that here. And I think that did a good enough job that it lands in my good. But with the good, we do have to talk about the bad. You know, we've had such a huge battle, right, last episode. And again, this is a non-spoiler section, but I will say this. There's no infected. And I know, again, non-spoiler, but if you're going into this after that major battle you had last week, you're not getting that this week. I'll just tell you that right now. Everything is a much more calmer. It's a much more another setup episode. And again, to me, you had a setup episode in episode 1, you have a big moment in 2. Now you're going into a setup episode 3, and normally it wouldn't be a big deal, except you have 7 episodes this season. So you had to fill in the gaps here with some of the stuff that you're doing, and I understand that. But because of the shortened season of 7 episodes, you're going to run into this issue where every minute counts. And in a lot of this time, it was building a connection and dynamic between 2 characters, and you don't get some of these adrenaline rush moments pretty much at all. And then finally, one thing I'm going to address, there are some major changes from the game. And I think in the wrinkles, I mentioned in the last one, some that I agreed with, some I disagreed with. Most of the changes they made in this one, I disagree with. And it's really revolved around one major character, which is Tommy. And I will leave it at that. We'll talk about it in the spoiler discussion. But to me, they make a change with Tommy, which they did in the last episode. But this time around, I think it's one that actually hurts him. And I'm interested to see, and I say interested, but also hopeful to see this dynamic change as the season goes along, and I am praying for it. I think it will, but it's definitely different from the games, and right now it is hard to see how it'll match the level of the games with the Tommy character. So now let's get to our final verdict. And I mentioned I didn't have a lot of great to say. I mentioned a couple good things, but I do think the bad really, I think the bad overwhelms the good in this episode. Now, I'll say this right now, and maybe I'll catch some heat for it. I think this is the worst episode of the series. I think it's the worst episode, not just season 2, but the entire show itself. And there's nothing egregiously bad. Like, this isn't a Master Chief sex scene in here or something so egregious like taking his helmet, like a character assassination. There's also not a lot of good either. It's a very plain, non-adrenaline rushing episode that even even like critics of, which we were, of season 1, episode 3, with the story of Bill and Frank, which was well written, there was more emotion tied to that than what you saw here. I'm going to give this episode a 5.5 out of 10. I don't think this was a great one for them. Even on the setup, I think they missed big opportunities to introduce new groups. They changed something with one of the main characters, which I think actually hurts him overall. And with that, again, nothing egregiously bad, but nothing egregiously great either. And so very average. When you look at the standard of The Last of Us, which I have a raised standard for, to me, it comes off disappointing. So it's a very standard to me. I'm a little bit lower. I think it's like a 7.7 IMBD. Even the viewers view this as the lowest episode so far. I'm even lower than that because I just think it wasn't the greatest. And even with Ellie, which I hope to see some more dynamics, because Ellie has been a pretty straight arrow for the first 3 episodes. Even with the major event from last week, I hope to see some more dynamic with her, like we have seen with other characters and like we have seen in the game. All right, guys, that was our non-spoiler review. Let's dive into the spoiler discussion. All right, guys, our spoiler discussion here again. Just me. Aki will be back, but again, hasn't given up. Hasn't given up on the show because of what happened last week. But let's talk about our spoiler discussion, and we'll dive into some major components. I don't want to go line by line, scene by scene, but I want to hit on some of the major things, and I think a lot of people are going to talk about. Let us know what you think in the comments below on what you liked and disliked about the episode and what your favorite moments and least favorite moments are. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up and sub button to help support the channel. And first thing I want to talk about is the aftermath of episode 2. You know, we start off the episode, you know, everyone cleaning up the bodies, the mayhem that went on. Again, really some cool set pieces, some like strong visuals that you see. And one of the big ones was this lady cleaning up Joel's body as they, I'm assuming, getting prepared to be buried. And Tommy comes in, and that was a nice little moment there, an emotional moment, because this is when, you know, I'm sure Tommy heard, but now he's seeing Joel's body there. And, you know, he has the nice line of, you know, send Sarah my love. And you're starting to see, again, real cool moment, the mayhem that has gone on. They're trying to rebuild the place, a lot of dead bodies. Then it goes Ellie into the hospital. She's kind of coming to. They mentioned she's in the hospital. She got damaged, and which was kind of funny because she got booted by Manny in the ribs last week. And, you know, she probably broke her ribs. How bad it was this? Broken ribs is about 6 weeks, or really bad ones are 12 weeks. So Manny has let's just say Manny has a leg. He was a soccer player. So he absolutely booted the hell out of Ellie, put her into the hospital, and then she has kind of this vision of seeing what happened to Joel, right? And she starts blurting things out, and then shoot back 3 months later. Ellie's in the hospital for 3 months. You see them rebuilding the settlement, and that's kind of the aftermath of episode 2. And then you could see Ellie getting checked by the doctor. She's good to go. Then comes in Gail. You know, obviously Ellie wants nothing to do with the conversation. Gail tries to talk, and they have an interesting conversation about the New Year's Eve. That's what Gail wanted to bring up, and the last thing that you said to Joel. And when they said, was that the last time you guys talked when you fought in front of everyone? Ellie says yes. Now the question to me is she telling the truth? I don't believe she is, because even Gail says later on that Ellie is a pretty big liar, right? So I don't think it's the truth. Obviously, if I played the game, so I have a different perspective, and I don't think they're changing that here. But she does lie and say that is the last time that they spoke. And then she kind of gets this, you know, she's being a smart ass here, just telling Gail what she wants to hear. Gail can already tell you, hey, you know what? You know, you're good at playing this game right here. And then, you know, Ellie makes a comment about there's a lot of messed up people. You'll have plenty of time. And Gail makes a comment right back and says, yeah, they're all messed up except for you, apparently. And so that was a nice little interaction. Again, I like the Gail dynamic here. Ellie shows, again, bottling things up, not being fully truthful in these conversations. And you can see, again, the aftermath of what happened. Thoughts are, I liked it. Those are the part where I like the aftermath. I like the moment between Tommy and Joel. And then obviously Ellie being damaged. She's been on the shelf. Very different from the games. It's a jump from the attack 3 months later. That did not happen, right? This is the events that come right after is literally right after the events go on. So that was definitely a different one. Trying to create a little bit of distance in between and trying to show the damage that has been done. And I think that's with the time that has gone past. Ellie being in the hospital for a while. How realistic? Again, she got one shot. This was part of my critique of last week, is like, I really wish they bloodied her a little bit more, not to do the same torture scene that they did against Joel. That's obviously, which was different, but I wish they showed the brutality a little bit more. I think they tried to clean it up, make it a little bit lighter for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't want to show the gruesomeness to the audience. I think it should have stayed the course, and I think they should have roughed her up a little bit more. I know she got a big boot, probably broke ribs and cartilage and stuff like that, to show the damage done to her on why she was on the shelf for 3 months, right? So that's my only critique on that. Then we get into the next part, which is Ellie getting home after she leaves, and she's going through the stuff, Joel's stuff, and then you see the emotions come out. So she's bottled it up. You're starting to see the emotions come out. That's some good stuff, in my opinion. And then Dina comes over, right? So Dina comes over. They're having a conversation. Initially, they're bringing up a little bit of side stuff on how, Dina's visited the hospital a bunch of times. And at the time, she wouldn't tell her what she knows, which that she did overhear the names of Abby's group when they attacked Joel before they put her to sleep. And now she's telling her now. And the reason she didn't tell her at the time, they didn't want to make her upset. She didn't want her, when she was damaged, to try to go hunting for them. So again, a little bit of, back and forth there, but she talks about how she heard the name Manny. She knows who Manny is. Heard the name Nora. And then she heard Owen and obviously Abby. So they know a few of them. She's not sure which one is Nora, but she identified Manny. She knows who Abby and she knows who Owen is. And she knows their group, right? It's the WLF. It's been 5 years since I played the game, but the Wolves, the WLF, the Wolves in Seattle. And that's one thing. And she brought up a story about Eugene. So how did she know that? Eugene is like this famous character that I hope we're going to see the backstory on what happened to him, because we talked about his time as the Fireflies and groups fighting Fedra in the West Coast. And one of these groups was the Wolves, the WLF. And he was wondering why they wouldn't just join with the Fireflies. So that's how she remembered. And she remembers the symbol that he brought up in that story. So cool dynamic, talking about it in between. Again, a lot of dialogue. Then it goes to the next part, which is convincing the Tommy after finding this information, and then the council. So they go to Tommy and they tell him what they know. Obviously, Ellie wants to go after them. And Tommy is hesitant, right? He said the place is not fortified. Again, he has to go to the council, right? Because they have to vote on everything. He needs to hear people out. And this is one of the parts where it's very different, and I think in the wrong way. In the game, and I hate to just go game to show, because there's going to be some difference. Tommy feels a lot of guilt from Joel's death. And he actually very hesitant in the beginning, but Tommy is actually the first one to go after this group, which we'll mention on their travels. But in this story, Tommy defended the place, finds Joel's body, and I was interested to see what would change with Tommy. And quite frankly, Tommy is hesitant to go out. And he talks about how, if he was alive, yes, I'd be across the country just like Joel would me, but if he was dead, he would let it go. And to me, I don't fully buy that. And that's kind of the one where you're starting to lose me a little bit here. They make Tommy out to be like, well, he's dead, so it's a lost cause. And then they say, well, bring it up to the council and you'll still have my support. So that kind of stuff there, I don't know. I don't know about that. It makes Tommy out to be like the impact is not felt that hard right now. So then there's the talk with Jesse and Ellie's training. Again, she talks about she does push-ups and crunches with Jesse. And Jesse's holding the bag and she's punching and they find out Jesse's now part of the council. And she's trying to recruit Jesse. Are you going to be with us? And Jesse gives her advice. You should write down your thoughts because you usually speak without thinking and no one's going to vote for someone who's angry. Then we get to the council. And again, I actually like this part because it's showing the tension in Jackson on this was a tragedy, but should we be using resources to go after this group? And you start hearing from different people, different individuals. And then there's a man who, again, slips my mind right now, but he comes up and he says, I think that we should let it go. I know it was terrible. We lost people, but we should let it go and forgive. And that's what's going to separate us from the Raiders, right? From these invaders. And then Seth, which is a guy who said a derogatory term about Ellie and Dina kissing, he gets up and has, to me, was a really nice dynamic, right? They had one saying about forgiveness and mercy. The other one steps up and says, we should want vengeance. They came into our place, they took one of our own, and if we don't do anything, it opens the door for anyone to come and do it next time. And he straight up says, I want vengeance. And he says, you're all playing like a bunch of victims. Really interesting there. It kind of came out of nowhere, but I also liked it. Then goes Ellie, which reads she written it down, a speech, talks about getting justice. She doesn't use the word vengeance, but you can tell what Seth said is kind of in the line of what Ellie is thinking. And so then they all give their speeches, and then finally they vote on it, right? Because they need a majority vote to send a group of 16. And there's going to be 16 of their best soldiers to go hunting and execute this group. It was 8 no's and 3 yes. Interested that I wonder if it's going to come up in a future thing, maybe between Tommy and his wife, Marie, who voted for what. I'm interested to see. There was 3 yeses. I'm assuming it was Tommy, Jesse, and one other person. I bet you Marie was a no out of the 3. So it's going to be trying to create maybe a dynamic there. But they get the no's. Ellie walks out and she's prepping to go on the mission herself, right? So she's putting all the guns together. Dina comes over. Ellie's just not thinking. She's just getting as many weaponry as she can. Dina comes over with a list of things that they would need, a map, right? She's bringing the brains here, and she pretty much says that she'll go with them. Then the question comes up on how they're going to get these supplies, right? Like med kits and all this other stuff. And then she says she knows it. There was a lot there. Do I love the council meeting? Yes, I do. Do I love some of the speeches like Seth and stuff like that, creating a little bit more dynamic characters? Yes, because in the game, Seth is a very small character. Right, so I'm going to say another part that he's involved in is not part of the show. He says the comment to Ellie, which is true. He also apologized, which is also happens in the game, but this part obviously not in the game. So she's just emotionally not thinking. She doesn't think things through. She just goes off emotion. How similar is it to the game? I mean, to me, I'm mixed on it. I just want to see again character development, right? Because right now she's a flat line. Even with the big event that happened last week, it still feels like it's the same. So I'm interested to see again how this goes forward before I really make a final judgment. But right now, I hope to see some more dynamics. I've seen it with some of the other characters. I think Dina's been really good, but I want to see again something change here because of the magnitude of the event that happened. I didn't mention was Gale and then Tommy come together, and they're talking about how they think that Ellie's going to do, something foolish. Gale's saying that some people can't be saved. There's only so much nourishing you can do. Another interesting conversation between the two. Again, I like the Gale character. Tommy feels like the responsibility is now on him to watch over her, and I think they're doing that for a reason. I think that scene was there for a reason because of what I'm about to say next that happened. Also, Gale pretty much says that Ellie's a liar. She lies a lot, and she doesn't really tell anyone the full truth except for Joel, who passed. I think there's a reason for that scene to show kind of the dynamic of what's about to happen with Ellie and also with the future of Tommy. Then we go to them meeting out in front of a gate to escape Jackson to start their hunt for Abby's group. Dina said that she knew a guy who can get them the supplies. And lo and behold, guess who that person is? It's Seth. It's Seth. And the one thing that Seth hates more than homosexuals is invaders coming in and killing their own. So he supplies them with the supplies that they need. And he says, I'm for your cause. There was another lady who helped me get the supplies for your cause. To me, I actually liked this thing for Seth because Seth was a very simple throwaway character in the game. They actually created a dynamic for him and a mini arc for him. And it's his show of vengeance that him and Ellie then shake hands, which they hated each other in the previous episode. Or really, Ellie hated him more. But that was like the sign of an arc being completed there, helping them get the supplies they need for their hunt. And then they leave. Very interesting. Again, I mentioned in the games, when this event occurred, the next day, battling what has occurred and the guilt on what has happened, he goes after Abby's group. Ellie and Dina, they go after Tommy in the game. They speak with Marie when Tommy leaves, and they go after Tommy. So this is a completely different change here. I don't love it. I don't love it because, number one, the impact doesn't show right now on Tom. He's kind of saying to let it go. To be quite frank here, and I think I have an idea on where they're going to go. I think they're going to, instead of obviously Ellie and Dina being sent by Marie to go after Tommy, it's going to be reversed. I think they're going to have Tommy, probably with Jesse, go after Dina and Ellie. But when Joel passes, everyone talks about the protagonists in the game and in the show, Ellie and the antagonist, Abby. And they have character arcs that go throughout the game. And I imagine that's going to happen in the show. But there's another character who has a change as well. And that's Tommy. Tommy has been painted as a more pure hero. He's tried to be different than Joel. This event that happened last episode is what forces him to change and become more like Joel. He's no longer the purity character. And that's it's an ironic and another character arc and a dynamic character being born. Right now, we don't have that, right? Tommy is still that purity hero. We don't know. He doesn't want to go hunt because it doesn't make logical sense to. If you're stepping a step back, yes, but again, it's that dynamic is not there at the moment. And right now, I think not seeing the future at this, I think it really hurts his character. And I hope that it gets remedied. But that's where I'll leave it at that. Let's talk about the last section. It's Ella and Dina going through their travels. Dina obviously was a huge help, getting all the materials, mapping things out, helping Ellie, who again is more on the vengeance path. You're seeing different conversations between them, kind of being more aware of the environment environments. I tell you what, Dina is way more helpful in the show than she is in the game. You know, it starts raining. They camp out, have an interesting conversation between them beforehand, you know, talking about first person they killed, talking about the kiss on New Year's Eve. Well, just interesting dynamic there where she admits that she's back with Jesse and that Jesse seems miserable off of something. And Ellie, you could tell she has feelings for Dina, but doesn't want to really reveal it. Interesting dynamic there. Another part which I kind of want to connect it because they eventually make it to Seattle and find a group of dead people right before it, which are the Seraphites. Before this incident, as they started traveling, you saw this group of, looks like wanderers, some of them with scars on their face, trying to leave a certain area, and they're talking about trying to get to safety from war. And they're doing whistle signals to each other. It just is a code for when things are clear, when there's enemies near. And as they get to a certain point, right, this little girl that's walking with this older gentleman, I don't know if they're father and daughter, he gives her a hammer, and then all of a sudden the whistles come out that there's danger. And so they tried to go into hiding. The little girl says, "Is it the demons?" I'm assuming that she's talking about the infected, but he says, "No, wolves." And so your mind goes into, this is the wolves that Abby's group will. Lo and behold, you see Ellie and Dina traveling through. They find these bodies, right? Dina throws up, which I think some people will call this stupid, but if you know further in the story, that little detail will get connected on why she got sick. And she also said this never happened before. So I'll just let you know there's more to it. I don't want to reveal exactly what it is because it's still early, but I'll let you know that there's more to it. But they find up on these dead bodies that the girl, the guy, the whole group has been slaughtered, right? They've been gunned down. And they're looking at the bullets. They're saying these are, you know, high-grade bullets like Fedra stuff. Immediately assume that it's the wolves, right? And then they obviously then get to Seattle. I'm just going to say this. To me, also, such a missed opportunity. So they introduce these wandering groups talking about a war that they're in and trying to get to safety. They make signals to each other that the wolves are near. But then this group is killed off screen. And if it's not the wolves, I can understand then why they're trying to set it up. But let's just say it's not the wolves. Why would you not show it? You had an entire episode of connecting Ellie and Dina. You don't have infected. This was the moment to show the conflict. This introduced one of the battles that I'm assuming we're going to see plenty of between two groups that they mentioned in this episode they're at war. So why tell us but don't show us? You kill them off screen. I would love to have seen some of the brutality between the two so that you could see why they, number one, slaughtered the group, or number two, maybe even get some back and forth between them, right? So if it is the wolves that did this, which that's all the hints are from the whistles and the guy saying it's the wolves, Dina and Ellie saying these are high-grade ammunition, it must be someone from militia, why not show it? Why just tell us? It dulls the impact in the intro to the group because then they talk about, well, there must not be a ton of them because they couldn't see the army. Like they have like 100,000 troops. So because they're looking over Seattle, they don't see a lot of people. So they're like, oh, there must not be a lot of wolves. And then it cuts to the wolves with a platoon of wolves coming down with 3 cars and a whole bunch of troops. And that's how the episode ends. So to me, it's like, have we seen in Last of Us a lot of discussion and character development between people? Yes, we have. But they've always sprinkled conflict in it, whether it's conflict with the infected or conflict with soldiers. You get neither of that here. You get neither of that, and it's just character connecting. And one character in Tommy feels like his character has been dulled and not had the same impact of losing his brother, which he can play off as, but where is that conflict within him? We do not see that here. Maybe will we see it in the future? Possibly, but we do not see it here. And I think it really hurts this episode. Again, if this was 10 episodes long, probably a little bit more forgiving. You're at 7, right? I know you're splitting the game into 2 seasons. This is the episode 3. There's 7 total. You're hitting episode 4. This feels like, again, missed opportunities. And in my opinion, the worst episode of the series. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. Make sure to hit that thumbs up, hit that sub button if you haven't already, and let me know what you think about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3 in the comments below. Also, check out our video at the end screen, The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2 review. With that, this is Frank from Marsman Gaming, signing off. Game on.